Your Eminence, Holy Abbot, Father Damien, and beloved brothers, Christ is risen. I would like to thank His Eminence Archbishop Dimitrios with all my heart for the invitation to come and speak at this great conference. I would also like to thank all of you for attending, and of course I do not really know what you would like to hear from me, and I believe it is very difficult for a speaker to present his message if he does not know the concerns and the expectations of his audience. And I would like you to forgive me if I somehow fail to measure up to your expectations. As you know, our topic will center around orthodoxy as a hospital. I will divide the subject into two parts. The first part will be on the Catechism of the Orthodox Church, which I consider extremely important because the terms under which the Church receives a new member shows exactly what the Church expects from the new Christian and what the purpose of the Church is in the life of this new Christian. The second part, which will follow after a short break and discussion, will be the therapeutic quality of the Church, or simply put, the Church as a hospital. Towards the end, if time allows, we will also touch on the secularization of the Church in its theology and spirituality. As you probably realize, the first part is somewhat more theoretical, and the second part will be more practical. I believe it is helpful to look at the subject theoretically and practically, and when we do this, the subject becomes more clear and easy to grasp. And now we will take a look at the subject of catechism according to Orthodox tradition, which is bifold: how the Church accepts a new member, and at the same time, what is the method used to keep this catechumen an alive and active member, and not one with a baptismal certificate. There are some people that believe that catechism is simply the theoretical knowledge of the truths of the faith which need to be understood intellectually. Although catechism possesses some of these elements, however, it is not limited to these. In reality, true catechism is an indoctrination, an initiation, if you will, in the mystery of the Church and the mystery of divine revelation. Please allow me to make some observations about man's condition before the fall. I strongly believe that in order for a teaching to be orthodox, it needs to examine man's condition before the fall and his condition after the fall. The Holy Scriptures tell us that man was created according to God's image and likeness. The image was granted to everyone. It was a given. However, the likeness, which is identified as theosis, or deification, it is the element which man was called to reach through his personal struggle. So he had to be obedient to God. Man, right after his creation, was at the state of illumination, or illumination of the nous, and he needed to reach the state of theosis, the ultimate union and communion with God. St. John of Damascus describes this in his writings, and he says that paradise was sensible and noetic. In other words, Adam with his body lived in a most beautiful and divine place. And this is the sensible part. And his soul had communion with God, and this is the noetic part. Man was free of all evil, simple and bright from all the virtues, angel-like, king of all nature, earthly and celestial. This shows that Adam, immediately after creation, was at the state of illumination and was sustained and nourished by the theoria, or vision of God. He needed, however, to be tested to detach himself from the relationship with the world and all the creatures, to acquire a union with God, to acquire an unshakable relationship with God. Adam was an infant spiritually who needed to grow and safeguard the grace of God. When we're talking about an illumined nous, we need to keep in mind that St. John of Damascus makes a distinction between nous and reason. The nous is the nucleus of man's existence, the very eye of the soul, whereas reason is the means by which a person expresses his thoughts and his experiences. The nous of a man is what acquires the experience of God, while reason is the faculty by which a man comes to terms or reaches out to nature. We find this identical teaching in the writings of St. Nikitas Stithatos, a disciple of St. Simeon, the new theologian. He writes that the soul has the nous, which is its most pure part, and this nous is the Father giving birth to the Logos, or the Word. He also repeats what St. John of Damascus says, that man immediately after his creation was at the state of illumination, illumined. In combining the passages of these two Holy Fathers, we can say that man's nous after the creation was at the state of illumination, which means that he had communion with God. He was practicing incessant noetic prayer, and this was man's natural state. Right after the fall, man suffered a distortion. The illumined nous became darkened, and in fact, the fall brought forth the darkening of the nous. We read in the book of Genesis that in paradise there were two types of trees. One tree was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the other tree was the tree of life. Adam disobeyed God and ate from the first tree, and by doing so, the path towards the tree of life was closed, and Adam was expelled from paradise, while the cherubim guarded the gates of paradise leading to the tree of life. It is very important to ponder on the interpretation of the Fathers about the theology of these two special trees of paradise. We must first see what St. Gregory the theologian says about this. In one of his talks, he says that God did not create the tree to be something evil, because right after creation, God saw that everything was good, nor did he forbid men to eat from this tree out of envy. But this tree was good, and it man's deification or theosis, if Adam would eat at the proper time and after the necessary preparation. This tree, according to St. Gregory the theologian, was the vision of God, which vision of God cannot be reached by men unless they prepare themselves, nor they can reach the vision of God autonomously by their own will or their own effort. We see this in one of the troparia, in one of the church hymns, in the 7th ode of the canon of the elevation of the Holy Cross, which was written by Cosmas the melodist. This ode says that Adam ate from this tree at the improper time. St. Nicodemus the Hagarite interprets this. He works on this passage of St. Gregory the theologian and this troparia, and he says that we can come to 4 different points. First, Adam, after his creation, was imperfect. Second, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was also noetic and had a deeper meaning. Third, that Adam would eat from this tree at the proper time. And fourth, one should not eat from this tree while in an imperfect an infant spiritual state. The same thing happens in the sacrament of Holy Communion. For some people, Holy Communion becomes paradise, and some others drink unto judgment. In other words, it becomes hell for them when they are not properly prepared. Adam had to be solidified first in the state of illumination of his nous, so that he could progress to the tree of life, which would provide for him a certain stability. The fact that God took him out of paradise is an expression of his love and his great mercy, because St. Nicodemus once again explains that if man would eat from the tree of life after the fall, he would remain immortal, and his disobedience and corruption would be eternally incurable. Let's see now how John of Damascus interprets these passages, and as we will see, he does so in accordance with St. Gregory the theologian. By the way, he reveres St. Gregory as his spiritual father, even though they lived centuries apart, approximately 4 centuries apart. St. John of Damascus writes that the tree of life was a test for Adam, testing his obedience to God. It was this tree which would enable him to open his eyes and acquire knowledge about nature and knowledge about God. And such knowledge would be good for those who reach perfection, but harmful for those who are not complete in their spirituality. We see the same result when solid food is given to someone who's in need of milk. The tree of life was exactly that, the power that gives life to those people who are worthy of life and are not subject to death. So the tree of knowledge of good and evil is the first level of the theoria, or vision of God, which is a preparatory stage to prepare a person to eat from the tree of life, which is a more perfect vision of God, which is the deification of men. It is very significant that St. Nikitas Stithatos also touches on these points, who is a disciple of St. Simeon, the new theologian, in his treatise on paradise. St. Nikitas Stithatos approaches this subject under 3 perspectives: the cosmological, anthropological, and the ascetic one. I will not attempt to analyze these different perspectives at this point. I will only deal with the ascetic one. St. Nikitas Stithatos says that paradise is the domain of practical philosophy, meaning the purification of the heart. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is the natural theoria, and the tree of life is the mystical theology. Through the natural vision, we acquire the knowledge of all existing natural things, and through mystical theology, we acquire the knowledge that results from our union with God. It is the knowledge that man is able to acquire about the Holy Trinity and the incarnation of the Word of God. So God placed man in paradise, which is the practical philosophy, to be purified more, and being at the state of illumination, he had to progress to mystical vision. And this he had to do by being obedient to God. This is the exact path that every Christian must. According to St. Nikitas Stithatos, this is the very point that separates Orthodox and the Church from the heretical bodies. I'm going to repeat this again. This is the very point that separates the Orthodox and the Church Fathers from the heretics. The heretics taste the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil without purifying the heart and this is why they miss their